this time, at the time we had the 4th state of the reps, right to ask only one question. We will take questions in sets of 5 questions. Kindly keep your questions and the foundations for same, crisp, and straight to the point. I know you shall cooperate with us. And so, if you have a question for His Excellency, can I see you by hand? Okay, I can see. Well, before I start calling you out, forgive me. Let's give honor to whom honor is due. I know we have the GJ here, represented by the executives and led by their president. So, Mr. President, I'll give you the first bite. And then, so you can be at your position. A microphone will be brought to you there, and then you ask your question from. But because he's the GJ president, we'll give him the opportunity to ask 2 questions.
Thank you, Sami, and thank you, His Excellency. I can't ask questions without commenting on this wonderful event. His Excellency, the former President, John Mahama, on behalf of the National Executive of the Ghana Journalists Association, on behalf of the Inky fraternity, we want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity to deliberate on matters of national interest. I also extend same warm greetings to every one of us here. At this juncture, the GJ would like to commend former President Mahama for availing himself once again of scrutiny as he outlines his visions and programs for the country. We hope that the former president continues on this path if he wins the election, so it will not be a 9-day wonder. I want to state that the former president is still a member of the GJ in good standing, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
We indeed appreciate that. Yes. The GJ has the core mandate to ensure that journalists and media houses get the freedom to operate by holding government and society accountable. We are also duty-bound to ensure the welfare of hardworking journalists. Therefore, I'll focus my brief questions on press freedom and the welfare of journalists. Press freedom. Your Excellency, the safety of journalists is one of the most critical issues that the GJ wants you to address if you win the upcoming election. In recent times, attacks on journalists and media houses have been on the rise, with some media personnel sustaining severe injuries. The situation was getting out of hand until we started blacklisting some high-profile personalities. One unfortunate aspect of this situation is the lack of political actors condemning attacks on journalists. The GJ believes that if influential individuals, including presidential candidates like your humble self, condemn such attacks, the issue will diminish. These attacks contributed to our poor performance on the World Press Freedom Index. This is something we need to work on. I must say that this year, our performance on the Press Freedom Index improved due to the blacklisting measures we instituted.
Yeah, Mr. President, still waiting
now
for
the
your question. Yes.
We want to ask, Mr. President, to enhance press freedom in this country, we are demanding amendment of certain provisions of the Electronic Communications Act and the Criminal Code, specifically Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act of 1960. This arbitrary application of the laws only instills fear in the media and the public. We want to ask, should Mr. Mahama ascend to the presidency, what steps will he take to amend these objectionable laws? I want to state that even though these laws were not meant for journalists, we've ended up being the target, and many of our colleagues have suffered under them. This is certainly a step backward, especially after the repeal of the Criminal Libel Act 20 years ago. Now, Mr. President, or former President, it is widely known, Mr. President, that the salaries of journalists, particularly those in the state-owned media, are significantly low. It is sad to know that this issue of poor salaries for journalists has contributed to a low ranking on the Press Freedom Index. If the NDC flag bearer becomes president, what will his government do about the low salaries of journalists working in especially the
Thank you
media?
very much, Mr. President, for these brilliant questions. Yes, I will take the next question from, I see Simon of Accra Times. Yes, can you bring the microphone here? Yes.
Oh, thank you. Is it on? Hello. Thank you very much. My name is Simon Agena, the editor of the Accra Times and the dean of the Parliamentary Press Corps. Thank you for this opportunity. Your Excellency, as you are aware that the depreciation of the cedi is affecting businesses in this country. Please, I would like to know from you, how are you going to stabilize the exchange rate? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next question. I will go here. Komala Kluche. Middle lane, Komala Kluche. Please kindly speak into the mic.
Komala Kluche is my name. I work at Media General. There's excruciating hardship in the country. We have seen you lament on same. How do you intend solving this? But whilst at this, can you believe in Ghana? We are building a house to house the vice president, and it's supposed to cost 13.9 million US dollars. This is located at the Switchback Road. Your government at the time said it cost 5.9 million US dollars. The VIP currently, Dr. Baumia, said they would have to do some renegotiation with the contractor. What do you intend to do about the weed-infested house supposed to house your VIP, so to speak?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I've seen you, so relax.
Yeah, Kafride, GTV. Mr. President, if you watch GTV tomorrow morning, you will see a bottle of orange water on my desk. It's not juice, it's from the river. I personally fetched that water. Galamsey is ravaging our environment, it's polluting our waters, it's destroying the farms. You were talking about agriculture and the fact that if we don't have food to eat, everything will be meaningless. I want to know what your plan is to deal with illegal mining, aka Galamsey.
Thank you for your question. The masculinity has been too much, so let's go for a female voice. Nima from Ghana Web.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Your Excellency, please, I would like to find out from you what's your position on free SHS. Given that, and also what is your thoughts on the proposal to pass the free SHS bill, given that the majority has hinted the bill will be coming to Parliament?
Thank you very much, Nima. So this brings us to the end of the first set, the free SHS bill. So this brings us to the end of the first set of 5. His Excellency will deal with these 5 and then we'll come back again. We're doing this till 10 p.m. So relax, you get the opportunity to ask your question. Your Excellency, we are ready for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your questions and also your commendation. This will not be a 9-day wonder. Everybody knows that when I was president, I held media encounters, every year of my presidency. It's not been the same under this government. They've run away from the searing accountability to the media. We all know that Chapter 12 of our Constitution is on press freedom, and it has been one of the most progressive constitutions that any African country can have, because it gives wide-ranging freedoms to the media to be able to do its work, and principally to carry out their role as the watchdogs of the people, not as the guard dogs of government. Some of us have abdicated that role, and instead of being the watchdogs of the people, we have been the guard dogs of government, savaging people who question and try to hold government accountable. So we must take note of that. Safety of journalists is important, and I must say that in this last administration, journalists have felt more afraid, they have felt more cowed. Many journalists have been harassed, they have been forced to flee the country. I remember a journalist had to run to South Africa and stay there for some time to let things cool off before he returned. Another journalist in the Upper East region who questioned some issues to do with illegal mining also had to run away from the region for fear that he was going to be assaulted or harmed. I remember Ahmed Swali and his murder, assassination, which up till today, government does not seem to have the political will to let the investigations go forward and bring the people who did this to justice. As long as these people are not brought to justice, the possibility exists that they can do something similar in the future. And so these are things that we take seriously. And my track record when I was president is there for everybody to see, that because I'm a colleague of yours, my training is in the media, and so I can empathize with the work you do. And so definitely you can be sure that as president, I'm not going to condone or conspire to harass journalists when they do the work that the Constitution has mandated them to do. We're willing to sit with you and look at any laws that are in contradiction with the Constitution. The Constitution is the overarching law of our country. And so if there are any laws that are punitive and constrain the media from doing its work, they are laws that we can look at and we can amend if necessary. The low salaries are not only the state-owned media, they are even worse in the private media. They are even worse in the private media. And so it's something that we need to attend to. The thing about media is that it is driven mostly by adverts. Unfortunately, things have gotten worse because businesses are suffering currently. The budget for advertising has shrunk. And also because of the number of media that we have, dividing that little budget amongst the media makes it difficult to be able for the media owners to be able to guarantee bigger salaries. And so even in turning our economic fortunes around and bringing the private sector back onto the path of growth and growing our economy would create a bigger pot for us to be able to give more advertising to media houses so that they can improve the salaries of media people. But in the meantime, if you remember, we set up a media development fund. There were a few challenges at the time, and so we put it in abeyance for the meantime. But I think there is something that we can look at again. Set up a media development fund. Government puts seed money into it. It was meant to improve training of journalists. It was meant to attend to welfare of journalists and so on and so forth. And so it's something that we are willing to reactivate. And together with the GJA and all the other media umbrella groups, we'll sit down and see how this media development fund can inure to the benefit of people in the media space. And so those are all things that we are willing to look at. The other question was...
So on the exchange rates.
Yeah, on the exchange rates. The immediate issue with the exchange rate and the economy is that the best signal Ghanaians can send to both domestic and international investors is that we're ready to change the current trajectory on which we are. I think that if we hold a successful election, we demonstrate to the world and our people that we are willing to change this trajectory on which we are, that is leading us further into the abyss. It will restore confidence in the economy. That in itself will send a signal that stabilizes the foreign exchange. Currently, nobody has hope in where we're going. And so people are hedging because of the rate of deterioration of the value of the cedi. People are hedging for other foreign currencies. And when it happens like that, then it puts further pressure on the currency. And so we would instill fiscal discipline, because eventually the main driver of the economy is fiscal discipline and fiscal consolidation. And so if you only want to ramp up revenues, but you're not willing to cut expenditures, then you have a situation where your budget deficit is out of kilter. And as you know, we had a budget deficit that went as high as 15% of GDP. And unless we instill fiscal discipline, we'll continue to have a situation where it puts pressure on our currency. It's like a household budget. You cannot spend more than you earn. And that is what this government has been. Spending more money than they earn. Borrowing more money than they can afford to pay. And that is what has, created the situation in which we are. So we must reduce the deficit. We must instill fiscal discipline. We must reduce the debt burden. And already there is a debt restructuring going on. And so we must continue the debt restructuring, but make sure that we put in the buffers so that we don't fall into this situation again. In my administration, we set up what we call the sinking fund. And we capped the stabilization fund. So any excess money that was above what you go to the stabilization fund went into the sinking fund. We also committed other revenues into the sinking fund so that we could anticipate debts that were becoming due and pay them. This government came and depleted the sinking fund and did not replenish it. And that is how come that we are in the crisis in which we currently are. And so replace the sinking fund, create more buffers so that the economy is more resilient to shocks. The thing about the world is it's unpredictable and shocks will come. But it is how resilient your economy is that will make you be able to come out of the shocks. We all went into the shock together with Cote d'Ivoire. Today our economy is so battered and bruised. And Cote d'Ivoire's economy is much more stable. And I just saw a video of the president waxing lyrical about Cote d'Ivoire in 2016. Today, I don't think he wants to hear that comparison, because inflation is lower in Cote d'Ivoire, far lower, single digit. And our inflation is at 25%. It went as high as 54%. And so discipline is important. But apart from that, part of the reason we're suffering is the collapse of the cocoa sector. Cocoa has been a traditional pillar of this economy. And when I was leaving office, we did a syndication, cocoa syndication of $1.8 billion. The banks had confidence in this country, and so they gave us $1.8 billion upfront to put in the cocoa industry. And this syndication has been going on over the years. Currently, the last syndication we did, we struggle to even make $800 million. I don't think we've received $800 million for the syndication. And so that injection of foreign currency that was predictable and sure, that used to come into the country every year, helped to stabilize the foreign exchange. Today, the cocoa industry is a pale shadow of itself. And so one of the things in the medium term is to revamp the cocoa industry as quickly as possible and make sure that its impact in terms of foreign currency injection is revived. Aside from that, we need to quicken our pace in the oil and gas sector. All of you have heard of the transition to green energy. It is real, it is happening. And so every country that has an oil and gas industry is putting in the maximum investment in order not to have what we call stranded assets. You will have the oil wells, but if that transition is completed, nobody will be interested in putting money to recover that crude oil and gas. These 8 years have been wasted completely. In my time, in 4 years, I worked tooth and nail to bring 2 new oil wells into production. If you look at the 10 years of oil production, from 2010 when we started oil production till 2016 when I left office, we have earned about $3.3 billion from our share of oil production. In the 8 years, that's because of the work I did to bring 2 new oil wells, In the 8 years that Nanado and Baumia have been in office, Ghana has earned $7.3 billion. And so in total, over 10 years, over the period from 2010 till now, we have earned about 10 billion. 7 point something of it in Baumia and Akufo-Addo's time, and 3 point something of it in Professor Mills and my time. For the last 8 years, nothing has happened in our oil industry. Not a single drop of oil has been added. Unfortunately, our production of oil has reduced by 32%. And so we're producing less. So one of the things we'll do is to quicken and attract the oil companies to come back. As I speak, E&I have run away to Cote d'Ivoire because of the unfavorable environment here. ExxonMobil was going to do significant work here. Because of greed, ExxonMobil decided to pull out because they thought the environment was toxic and corrupt, and so they pulled out. So one of the things is to restore investor confidence in the oil field. And there are oil fields and compartments that have been appraised that are just waiting to begin production. And so revamping them and ramping up our oil production and gas will bring in the needed foreign exchange that will help to shore up our currency. But we must also look at getting more from our extractives. We have bauxite, we have gold, we have lithium, we have manganese, we have so many other minerals. We will work to make sure that Ghana's share of those extractives is increased so that we can have more foreign currency coming into our country. We produce gold, but because it's not streamlined, a lot of that gold is leaking out and individuals are making the profit instead of the country making it. And so we'll streamline the extractives so that we're able to earn more money. The Vice President's residence, I don't know what the current situation is, but I know that initially when we commenced the idea of creating a suitable residence for the Vice President, the former Nigerian High Commission land was acquired for that purpose. And I know that some construction took place there. Initially, our cabinet was informed that it will cost about $5 million, from what I understand. And so that money was procured and the work commenced. When the new government came, I understand, I don't know exactly what figure, but they said that it had overrun the $5 million. I don't know exactly by how much. But it's news to me that it is going to cost $30 million. I haven't seen the figures and all, but really, I wonder if we have value for money. And that's why I say that in our anti-corruption fight, we will subject any project above $5 million to value for money audit. Because until you audit that project, you can't tell whether it is worth the value for the money we're putting in. And so when we come, we'll look at the figures and we'll do an audit and see whether, yes, 30 million is what is appropriate or it should cost far less. But in these crisis times, one wonders whether that project is really a priority. Because when I was president, the Vice President lived in what is currently called the Australia House. And the intention was to finish this and move him there. But in the crisis, maybe it is not something that we should rush to finish. There are many other pressing commitments that we need to look at. But like I said, when we come into office, we'll do a value for money audit and find out whether we are spending more or less. Galamsey is a problem of compliance. We have all the laws. We have everything. It's the enforcement that is the problem. And the enforcement is a problem because those who should be enforcing it are part of the problem. Today, DCs and ministers all have small-scale concessions, and I indulge in Galamsey. And that's why I said, any person who serves in my government, if you want to be a small-scale gold miner, go and be a small-scale gold miner. If you're a DCE, be a small-scale gold miner. Don't take public office under my administration. And so we're not going to countenance having any of our ministers or our political appointees involved in small-scale gold mining so that we can enforce the laws properly. And what are the suggestions we've given? One, we know the districts where mining takes place. We will open an office of all the agencies that oversee the mining sector in those districts. There must be a Minerals Commission office in every district where gold mining is taking place, so that enforcement and compliance can be right at the doorsteps of the industry in the particular district. The Environmental Protection Agency, there must be an EPA office in every district where mining is taking place. And we have universities that are producing young graduates. UNER is one in Sunyani, UMAT is the other in Takwa. These young graduates are geologists, they are environmental protection specialists. They have a lot of experience when it comes to gold mining. And so we're saying that we're going to identify the concessions and who hold the concessions. And we're going to employ these young people to work with the companies that legitimately own the concessions so that they can guide them in how to do proper mining. We're going to ban mining in forest reserves. As for that, it's non-negotiable. The law that was amended to allow people to go into forest reserves, the law that was amended to let people enter forest reserves to do mining will be re-amended to stop it. Because the figures I'm getting are frightening. And that is why the climate change is real, because our dry seasons are getting harsher. We used to have 365 days rainfall in the western region. Today it is not so, because all the forest reserves have been invaded by mining companies. And it's insightful that in the past somebody who was supposed to protect the forest, he himself eventually was known to own about 2 or 3 mining companies that had been given permission to go into forest reserves. I think that those trees, some of them 700 years old, some of them older than Ghana, older than our ancestors, are more important than the gold that lie underneath them. And the point is, if we cut all the trees, we will be leaving a barren land to our children and grandchildren. We don't want the forest zone to become the savannah zone. We must protect those trees and rebuild those forest reserves. So we would stop the mining in forest reserves. The question about
Free SHS.
Yeah, free SHS bill. I support any bill that will improve our education. 1, to make it sustainable. 2, to afford quality education for our children. And so any bill that would achieve this is something that I'll support. I haven't seen the bill, and I don't think that it has been subjected yet to stakeholder consultation. But we would want to see the bill, and I'm sure that when Cabinet has approved it, it will be laid in Parliament. And when it's laid in Parliament, as a parliamentarian, the normal action is to refer it to the committee responsible. And I'm hoping that when that bill is referred to the committee responsible, it will do the proper stakeholder consultation so that we all can be on board. Because if you're making fundamental changes to our educational system, I think that parents, teachers, and everybody who has a stake in education must be involved. I don't know, we're just hearing rumors, and as long as we haven't seen the bill, you cannot say if they are authentic or not. But I think some of the things I've heard is to fuse the JHS and the SHS together. That is a very fundamental move. And so if you're going to do that, what will the impact be? What do teachers say? What do parents say? What do students say? What do all the stakeholders in the industry say? There are rumors that BEC will be cancelled, and so it's just rumors we've heard. Until we see the bill itself, we cannot make any determination. But like I said, I will support any bill that goes to improve quality and sustainability of our free SHS. Thank you.
But Your Excellency, she also wanted to know what your position on free SHS is.
My position on free SHS?
Aside the bill, yes.
My position on free SHS is known. In 2015, I launched progressive free SHS. That's what the Constitution says. The only difference between us and MPP is the approach. We thought that we should put the infrastructure in place and we should do the necessary preparation to absorb the free SHS. And so we started with day students. We made it free for day students. And in the second year, we absorbed 120,000 students on the free SHS. Nanado himself lauded me. It's there in the media. Just, if I had my phone here, I would Google it. They say Nanado lauds Mahama's free SHS. It's there. UNESCO, congratulated us for launching the free SHS. How can a person who launched free SHS be against free SHS? And so it's a political gimmick that is played by our opponents. Free SHS has come to stay. And nobody can roll it back. All we are saying is, let's improve the implementation. Let's take away the bottlenecks. Let's work to abolish the fast track. Let's be able to feed the children better by decentralizing the school feeding, the free SHS school feeding program. So those are all the kinds of initiatives we're thinking about. But we can only take that decision if we come together as stakeholders and discuss freely the challenges that it faces. Today, there is not the environment for a free discussion of free SHS. Ask any teacher or headmaster. If they make comments adverse to the conditions and implementation of free SHS, they are either sacked or they are transferred to Siberia. And so we must change that. We must free them to be able to come up and talk about it and discuss free SHS and how we can improve it. My commitment is to improve it. And so that political gimmick, if he comes, he will cancel free SHS. And I've seen some Osofutu going around and repeating the same thing. I don't know if he's, I don't know who he is, but he's also gone around repeating that same tired, hackneyed, political propaganda. I am committed to free SHS. I was the one who launched free SHS in this country, and free SHS has come to stay.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going for the second round. Aniampofo, my good brother Shadov is also here. So kindly bring the microphone here. I see Miss Ami here, I see Kwame Menka. Then I'll take 2 here, so that will be 6. So let's start with Aniampofo of Metro TV. Kwame, you're seated at the wrong place. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. So my first, I'm limited to 1. All right.
Annie, can you increase your volume?
Okay, 24-hour economy. So if you check the global countries that are practicing 24-hour economy, it includes USA, Canada, France, UK, Singapore, and the rest, Germany. All those countries are in the Western developed world. I'm just wondering, I checked the statistics with the France implementation, and I think one of their cardinal challenges has to do with labor. So they are largely relying on imported skilled labor now, and it's a great challenge in that country. And I'm wondering how it came to you that Ghana, being an African country, can practice a 24-hour economy compared to these developed countries, and how are we going to be able to implement it to meet the standard of implementation by developed countries where we are actually not yet?
Thank you very much. I see that Pakwesi, I'll come to you. All of you, I'll come to you. But I see the gentleman by your hand. It's only fair that I allow that gentleman to ask his question. So let's take him. I'll come to you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My name is Felix Nyaba. I work with Express News. Your Excellency, your critics, especially your political opponents, says that you and the NDC cannot boast of any social intervention policies. Will you mind share with us what have you done on this social intervention policies in this country? Thank you.
Shando, bring the microphone to the front. The man in that colorful bow tie. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. I work with Wesleyan Television. This is my question. When the NDC won the 2008 elections, they were caused by a section of the party, and indeed, the party's founder for the government of the day to be tougher on past corrupt officials. But it appeared that under the impression of Father for All, your late boss, Professor Mills, was lenient, and indeed you've also been accused of that same leniency, if I have to put it that way. But years down the line, I'm inclined to ask, have you delivered yourself from that spirit of leniency? And and if you have, what are the first 3 allegations of corruption that you would probe if elected? I mean, on my paper, there's a plethora of them, but in your books, what are the first three that you would propose?
Thank you very much. Let's go to the middle lane. Miss Ami here. Then I'll come to you, Wisdom. I'll come to Wisdom. Then we'll go to the fire. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President. I am Sewami and I work with the EIB network. So, Mr. President, at a gathering of NDC lawyers somewhere in September last year, you urged them to aspire to become judges so that you can appoint them to bring a balance to the judiciary, which you have termed as an NPP-inclined judges. I want to know if you still stand by this position, and if by this you mean that if you become president, you will appoint NDC sympathetic judges or promote them to become judges even at the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wisdom, middle lane. I'll come to the last lane. Okay.
My name is Wisdom Hedejumi. I work with the XYZ Broadcasting Limited. Mr. President, clearly you have just one term, and that will make you unaccountable. I remember very well in your interview with the Voice of America, you indicated that one term, which is 4 years, was not enough for any president to make any meaningful impact. So, does the position still remain, or can you tell us that would that 4 years be enough for you to fix the economic mess you've been complaining about?
Thank you very much. Let's go to the far end. I see Kwekwe Usweje. I see Sadiq Adams. I'll come to you. So, Kwekwe Usweje, stand on your feet so that they can see you. I see Sadiq Adams also there. I'll call you. I've seen all of you, so don't worry.
Thank you very much, Sami. Your Excellency, if elected president, I want to find out what measures, specific measures you would implement to address challenges that were faced by depositors and investors whose monies are locked up as a result of the collapsed financial institutions, including Men's Gold.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. So let's take one more there. Okay. There is one just by you, the gentleman who is sitting just by you, yes.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Blessed Sugan. I work with Joy News. Based on your success in the 2024 general elections, you would not just be the executive president of the Republic, you would also be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Your Excellency, there's a professor, Kwesi Enin, who's enjoying support from Imani Africa. They are in court asking the Supreme Court to enforce their interpretation of Article 202 of the Constitution, which will bar any new president from appointing new chiefs for the security agencies, including the IGP. You have a test case if you get to win the elections, which would mean that you have an IGP which is somewhere, who has an age range of 53. Mr. President, what's your personal opinion on, the security of tenure for such persons, and will you be willing to work, for instance, with the current IGP if you're elected president?
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of this set. We have 6 questions. Your Excellency, we are all ears.
Thank you. And the first question was about the 24-hour economy and the countries that are implementing that policy. Indeed, there are several countries implementing it. And as you said, Ghana would probably be one of the first in Africa to begin the implementation of this policy. It is not new. For those of you who have access to the 40-year development program, which was passed under my administration, the issue of the 24-hour economy was embedded right in there. And it is meant to accelerate our productivity. It is meant to increase opportunities for employment. And so the example you give for most of those European countries is that they have an aging population because birth rates are falling so low. So even as they accelerate their economies with more shifts to increase production, they don't have the labor to be able to service that 24-hour economic policy. We have an abundance of labor. We have young people willing and able to work. And that is the more reason why we even have a better justification to implement the 24-hour economy. But of course, there are people who come and say, oh, but there's 24-hour economy already. There are some businesses that are working 24 hours. Yes, they are doing that by choice. That just a few of them think that they have the capacity to work 24 hours. So it's just by the decision of the owner of the enterprise that he can implement it. It has never ever been a policy in Ghana. So the difference between what they're referring to, that, oh, some companies are running 24 hours, the difference is that we're going to make it a policy, and it's going to have, the guidelines for that policy, and what government can do to encourage more companies to run 24 hours. That is a simple thing. And so we say we're going to bring a 24-hour economic policy. Oh, but we've never had a policy that regulates and guides how we can incentivize companies to do 24 hours. And I said that one of the things we'll do is give them tax incentives. Because one of the things that adversely obstructs businesses in Ghana is our high taxes. And so if you give some of these companies a tax break, it will encourage them to pump more into production so that they can employ more people. And so that's what we also have the issue of safety. Because if companies are working in the night, you must guarantee that they are safe to work. And that is an obligation of government. You don't expect the companies to go and hire security people to come and guard them so that they can work. Government must make sure that it creates a safe environment for the 24-hour economic policy to work. Aside from that, transportation. We need to provide an efficient transport network so that even in the evening, people who have to go to work can get easy, affordable transport to run. And that's why we imported the Ayalolo buses, which today are parked in some graveyard. They were never utilized. Government said they didn't have the money to implement it. But it was a combination of interest between government and the private sector. And so GPRT and all of them were involved. And it was going to run as a bus rapid transit system so that people could catch buses to and from work at whatever time that they close. And so when we come, we're going to revamp all those bus rapid transit systems and buses. Why the 24-hour economy works in some of the developed countries is at any time of the day or night when you go to a bus stop, you get a bus to transport you to work. And so government has some obligations under the 24-hour economy. There are many places that we can easily change into a 24-hour economy mode. The judiciary announced recently that, judges are going to sit later than they have done. And so it will mean that people have access to justice better than if they sit the normal time that they sit. If you go to the ports, when the ships come, even at night, the cranes are working and offloading the containers. But why can't I go and clear my container at night? Do we need more customs officers? Yes. Must we get more bankers so that we can make our payments and clear our goods even at night? Yes. And so there are things that government can do to make the 24-hour economy possible. Government has its obligations, and we are going to make it a policy so that the private sector can come on board and be able to do so. People talk about demand. The demand is there. We import 3 billion worth of food products every year, and some of these things we can produce ourselves. And so you can't tell me there's no demand. If there was no demand, why are we importing? If there's no demand for vegetable cooking oil, why are we importing vegetable cooking oil? It means that the demand is there. And so if we can increase productivity, we can meet the demand, our domestic demand. But apart from that, we've been giving the advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It says register your brand. As far as I know, Ghana has registered 70 products that it intends to export tariff-free into other countries, we can increase the number of products that we're exporting by increasing demand. We have pharmaceuticals. We have a developed pharmaceutical industry. When I was in government, I gave them money to expand their production to Binko, NS Chemist, Dan Adams, all of them. They have the capacity to increase production and work 24 hours, both to feed domestic demand and also for export. And like I've said somewhere else, we're going to use government's financial muscle to help Ghanaian-owned companies, Ghanaian-registered companies. Because the market, and I'll give an example, the market for pharmaceutical products, if we give a bias towards Ghanaian-made products, and even if they are marginally more expensive than foreign products, we buy them, we're keeping employment in this country. But if we go and bring those analgesics, we bring those antibiotics, we bring those cough syrups from India and other places, we are exporting jobs to those countries. And so we use government's financial muscle to give an advantage to Ghanaian registered companies so that they can produce more and employ more of our young people. And so that's to do with the 24-hour economy. I've heard this thing said so many times, and I wonder the basis why they say so. The NDC has no social intervention programs. It's the funniest thing I heard. Who brought the District Assembly's Common Fund concept? It was the NDC. We put it in the 1992 Constitution and said 5 to 8% of total government revenue should go directly to the districts for their development. So if you go to your district and the District Assembly has built a school, a KVIP, a nursery, a sports recreation, a community center, it is a social intervention of NDC that has produced that. Who introduced the GET Fund? Mr. Rawlings, NDC. We passed the GET Fund law. But for the GET Fund, where would our education be? Most of the educational infrastructure in this whole country is being provided through the GET Fund. And so how can you say we haven't introduced social intervention policies? But in any case, what is social intervention policy? Is an action or policy that provides social services or social benefits to the people. And so it's not only GET Fund and other things. We have provided more access to water than any other government in the history of this country. When Professor Mills came into government, access to clean drinking water was 58%. By the time we left office, access to clean drinking water was 76%. For Accra alone, we added 40 million more gallons of water. In 8 years, not 1 gallon has been added. And I hear the Ghana Water Company say, oh, Accra is overgrowing its supply of water. It's overgrowing its supply because in 8 years, you have not added a single gallon to it. You must plan and know what your population growth rate is. And you must continue to put in the capacity to bring in more water. And that's why I'm saying that we took water and brought it in from the northern direction of this country. And so Adenta and other places that had never gotten water for almost 15 years saw their taps flowing for the first time. Today, I'm sure your taps flow twice a week or something. If you don't store water, you will run short. And so we need to invest to bring more water supply, not only to Accra, but to all our growing communities around the country. And so if you are a government and you haven't invested in improving water, definitely access to people will be denied. We've extended electricity more than any government in the history of Ghana. Electricity is a public good. When electricity arrives in a community, it changes the lives of the people very rapidly. People can engage in small-scale enterprises. It was Rawlings who introduced the Rural Electrification Program and the National Electrification Program. And so today, when we say that Ghana has more than 80% access to electricity, it's because the NDC introduced those policies for us to be able to do so. So how can any person say that NDC has not introduced any social intervention? Even the NHIS. NDC started a pilot in Damango and Nkranza for the NHIS. Implementation started in President Kufuor's time. But what President Kufuor introduced was a mutual health insurance scheme. And so your card, your NHIS card, allowed you to access health services only in the district in which you were registered. Today's National Health Insurance Scheme was introduced by Professor Mills. He changed it from a mutual district insurance scheme to a national health insurance scheme so that your card could access health care anywhere in Ghana you go. And so I wonder what is giving these people this idea. You know, I can refer to free school uniforms and free sandals. The free school uniform policy was introduced by Professor Mills. I can refer to the free textbooks for basic schools. When Nana Jane, seated here, was minister, she came and met a situation where 3 children had access to 1 textbook. By the time she left office as minister, every child in basic education had access to 4 textbooks of their own. If that is not social intervention, I wonder what else is social intervention. Even let's take progressive free SHS. It's a policy, the free SHS. I launched the free SHS. And so you can't say that we have not had any social intervention. If you talk about the cocoa sector, our policy of free fertilizer and free cocoa inputs and free seedlings changed the lives of the cocoa farmers. And if you remember, when I was leaving office, we did almost 1 million tons of cocoa because of the policy that we had of giving these inputs to the farmers free. If that is not a social intervention, I wonder what else is. That argument must stop. And the point even is, these people have done more harm to social interventions than any other government in history. They capped the NHIS, and apart from that, they starved it of funds. And so most people with an NHIS card today cannot access health services. You go, you get a consultation, there are no drugs, not even analgesics. You go to hospitals and they say they don't accept the NHIS card because the NHIS is not refunding their claims. And it's not refunding their claims because this government has starved the NHIS of money. They've starved the District Assembly's Common Fund of money. The Constitution said 5% to 8%. We were giving district assemblies 7.5% of national revenue. When this government came, they reduced it to 5%. And the rest they are putting into the consolidated fund to spend at the center. And even the 5% does not come. If you go and ask any district secretary, he will tell you there is no money. They go begging the MPs to let them have access to the money in their district common fund accounts to be able to do even some of the basic things. And so this government is doing more. Get fund, they collateralize Get fund and spend the money in advance. So Get fund is not able to continue the projects that it is undertaking because the fund has been collateralized. And so this government has done more harm to the existing social interventions than any other government in the history of the country. And so that is my take on that. And then you asked, have I exercised myself of the father for all, the father for all syndrome? My boss, my president, was a special person. He several times said he believed in looking forward and not looking into the past. And so I'm sure that people got away with some of the crimes that they had committed against the people. I became president 4 years later, after President Mills had done his 4 years. I mean, I came into office 5 months before the election. And so when I became president, it was going to be a bit difficult to be investigating things that happened in 2008. And so I said that, look, any allegations of corruption that are made against any public officer, I give the investigative agencies the free hand to investigate. And so I remember in those times the National Service investigation, the JIDA scandal, people even forget that I was the one who commissioned the Committee of Inquiry into JIDA. and all the issues that came up. The report was presented to me as president, and I gave the report to the media. And that is referred back to me as my crime of condoning corruption. The fight against corruption begins with shining sunlight into an area, and that is what I sought to do. And so when we gave the JIDA report to you guys, it was referred to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General began to take action. Some of the people involved went to court to restrain the Attorney General, and the court processes took forever. There were others where there was prosecution of my own colleague and friend, Abu Gapele. The Attorney General put him before court, and he was jailed. It was recently that President Akufo-Addo granted him amnesty. And so their will to fight corruption was there. We even retrieved monies from some of those involved in JIDA. We retrieved as much as 50 million Ghana cedis at the time. And so the track record is there. And I can assure you, if you believe that I was imbued with the Father for All syndrome, it has been exercised. And it's been exercised because it's a demand by the people of Ghana. The people of Ghana are asking for accountability. And we must create a situation where everybody who agrees to serve must know that he will be held accountable to the people. We can't afford to fail. We've seen some things that are happening in other countries. And let's not think that Ghana is immune from that. And I can tell you, our young people are getting frustrated and desperate. And if we don't take drastic action and we think that it's going to be business as usual, we will be shocked at what would happen in this country. And so, it's not my demand, it's not a threat, as Nana Jane said. It is a promise that will hold public officers accountable. And it's not going to be only post-regime accountability. It's easy to prosecute your political opponents when they've left office. But the difficult decision of dealing with your own people when they go wrong, it is what makes you pass the test of the fight against corruption. And we're going to hold our people accountable. And so, I've said it several times, if you get into trouble, I'm not going to be a clearing agent to clear you. If the investigative agencies catch up with you, you are on your own.
All right, sir.
And the appropriate sanctions will be taken.
All right.
The issue of judges, I believe that our constitution gives the judiciary certain privileges. They are the only arm of government that does not renew its mandates. They don't go for elections to be re-elected as judges, and they're given security of tenure. I think that the obligation and responsibility of every president is to appoint fair-minded people. Human beings, as we are, would have our own inclinations towards one party or towards one religion or towards one culture or other. There are many things that make us who we are. But the obligation when you become a judge is to look at the cold, hard facts and rule based on that. Some of the pushback that we are seeing currently is the penchant by this president to pack the courts. And only recently, you've seen what happened. And I can't understand why the Chief Justice will be the one recommending, which judges to appoint. The Constitution is clear. That is the President who appoints judges in consultation with the advice of the Judicial Council. And so the initiative to appoint judges must come from the President and submitted to the Judicial Council. It brings it back with advice to the President, and the President forwards it to Parliament. That is the procedure. It is very rare that this time the recommendation comes from the Chief Justice to the President. And even the issue of capping the number of judges. The Constitutional Review Committee recommended that we cap Supreme Court judges at 15. And so the issue of capping the Supreme Court is not for the Chief Justice to say. We will resurrect the constitutional review process when I become president. And when we do that, we will put it to the Ghanaian people whether we should retain the 15, whether we should reduce it, or whether we should increase it. And so I don't think that should be the Chief Justice saying that we should increase and cap at 15. And even when she says, and cap at 20, and even when she says cap at 20, she has already recommended the 5 that will cap the 20.
Thank you.
And even bring it to 21. Because if you add that 5, it will go to 21. And so I think that we must, as much as possible, if you have the discretion, the president of this country has a lot of discretionary powers, but that discretionary power must be exercised with responsibility, and make sure that when you are appointing people onto the judiciary, which has security of tenure until they reach 65 or 70 or whatever age is recommended, you cannot remove them unless for stated reason. And so in appointing people to such powerful positions where they are the arbiter of whatever happens in this country, we must make sure that we use a criteria of fair-minded people who can put their prejudices aside and be able to judge fairly, because they are the last resort when disputes occur. And so I think that that is the... I was speaking in Elubo when I made the statement that I made. And that statement was in 2016. And it was made to justify why I deserved a second term in office. And I believe that at that time we had made significant steps in terms of stabilizing the economy, in terms of infrastructure development. We had brought the Echuabo gas processing plant on stream. We had been faced with a crippling energy crisis. We had turned it around. By 2016, we had stabilized the power situation. We had worked hard to bring 2 new oil blocks on stream, which increased the volumes of our oil production and the value of our production. We had introduced a new Energy Sector Levy Act, which today is bringing in almost 9 billion cedis a year. And so there were several things that we had done. We had established a new port at Tema. We had built a new Terminal 3 at our airport. We had expanded the Takrady port. We had expanded educational infrastructure. We had expanded health infrastructure with district hospitals and regional hospitals. We had expanded access to electricity and water. We had built new markets in many places so that we could improve trade and commerce. And so on that basis, I wanted another term to be able to continue and consolidate what I had done. And that's why I made the statement that I did. But this time, I come back to the job with experience. And I'm going to hit the ground running. And so even though 4 years is short, I believe that in 4 years, we can reset our country. And there are objectives that one wants to achieve. And I say that in 4 years, we can establish a strong fight against corruption. It is possible for a president to do that. I believe that in 4 years, we can begin carrying out constitutional reforms and reviewing our constitution. And that is an objective that I believe I will put myself to and we can achieve in 4 years. In 4 years, we can begin to turn around our economic fortunes and stabilize the economy. I don't say that it will become a land of prosperity, but at least we'll turn around the decline, stabilize the economy, and put it back onto a path of growth. In 4 years, I believe that we can ameliorate and alleviate a lot of the hardship our people are facing currently. Because in stabilizing the economy and stabilizing the currency, we can reduce inflation and reduce some of the hardship that our people are facing. I believe that in 4 years we can improve our infrastructure. If we implement the big push, we want to put $10 billion over 5 years in infrastructure development. It will include roads, it will include bridges, it will include the essential infrastructure that will make our country run. And I believe that in 4 years, with the implementation of a 24-hour economic policy, we can begin to create more jobs for our people. And so, yes, I think 4 years for the reset objectives that I have mentioned, one can create a turnaround and create a platform for resetting our country and giving it the opportunity to take off. Currently, the prosecution of the Men's Gold chief executive is ongoing, but I think that it should go beyond the investigation. I don't know how far they've gone with identifying the assets of Men's Gold and identifying the holdings, validating the holdings that people had. It is only when you've done that and you know what the quantum involved in that you can make, promises and assurances of how to alleviate the suffering of Ghanaians. A lot of people really suffered under this Men's Gold, and many of our public servants and others who were enticed to put their monies in have suffered because of what has happened. And so when we come, we'll accelerate the prosecution of the person involved, but we'll also go one step further to look at what assets are recoverable and see what the quantum of investments that were made. Some people talk about some amounts of money, but I don't have that validation. It's until we have that validation that we can make an assurance that some restitution can be made. I'm aware of the case in court, and I don't want to comment on it in order that I'm not in contempt of court. But I would say that the security services are different from the public services. And that is why the head of the security services is called the Commander-in-Chief. Security rules and ethics are different from what we have in the public services. And so if you are a Commander-in-Chief and you cannot even change your guard, then change the Commander-in-Chief title. And so, without prejudicing what is going on in courts, let's see what the courts say. But I do believe that we should be able, if you ask me, I do believe that we should be able to put the right people in the right places at any time in order to ensure the safety of our republic. If you do happen to have a security chief who is not effective, and because we pass a judgment that the president cannot touch him, it affects the safety of the citizens. And when it comes to safety of the citizens, it is something that we must take seriously. If a public servant makes a mistake, the consequences are not immediate. But if a security chief makes a mistake and we lose a life or people suffer harm, the consequences are irreversible. And so we must look at everything that goes with it. But let's leave it to the wisdom of the courts to make a decision, and then we'll decide how we all go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I can see the 2019 Journalist of the Year, Samson Ladi Ayinene here. Go to, no. That side. He's in a red and black smoke. My Fulani brother, Umar Sanda, you are next. Regional Balance. Paka Wilson, Ashanti Region, I'll come there. Then the sports journalists are here. Sadiq Adams, you're still here. Michael Utieje, Pakwesi Asare, I'm coming to you. And His Excellency has told me that you'll be extending the time, so don't worry. Senior, the floor is yours.
It's refreshing to hear about what could be done about corruption. And Mr. President, when you were voted out, I encountered many civil society leaders who said the corruption was endemic, and extending the time of the NDC would mean the corruption will get worse. I hear the same civil society leaders repeat the same thing, that at least one benefit we can get as a country is not to keep a government in for 8 years because the corruption will get bad. I don't believe that we must get to elections before we can get what we deserve. I believe citizens' power ought to be exercised without the kind of repression we see with the police today, so that a young man, a PhD, Oliver Barker-Vormawor, is facing prosecution, staging a coup on Facebook. That ridiculous thing, I don't know if you will instruct your Attorney General to file a nolle prosequi to stop that nonsense. Now, you kept repeating reset, reset, reset. I believe it must be a very important word to you. In Kenya today, there is a reset, and the citizens are forcing it. 47 corporations, SOEs, are being dissolved. 50% of the president's advisors are losing their jobs. My question to you is, 8 people were killed in elections in 2020. We are 4 years down the line. Those lives must matter. Over 200 people in Ashaiman were brutalized by the army, and I wrote about it as state-sponsored terrorism against them. 180 of them were arrested by the military, manhandled and released without anything. As we speak, nothing has happened. What have you done as the opposition leader about these things? What will you do about these situations?
Thank you very much. You see, I've given you a lot of time. So when I come on Newsfile, kindly return the favor. Umar Zanda.
Thank you, Sami. Good evening, Mr. President. My question is, we are at the Kempinski Hotel. A few meters from here, there's a hole that has been described variously as the world's most expensive hole. My question is, when or if you become president, will you cover that hole, complete the hole, or convert the hole? That's my question to you. And just across the street from that hole is the Office of Special Prosecutor. What's your plan with the OSP? Thank you so much.
For this round, I'm going to stay here for a while. I see Yatiti at the back. So let's go for a woman.
Good evening, Mekachi. And Your Excellency, my question no Yanubuchi, Mame, Pacho, with all permission.
Thank you.
Abandoned projects. Mentia said the entire buying be about person starting a day. Near the taxpayers' money, Akobobo Singer. No project needs to one up pro. Look at Sagleme. E-blocks, Basa. At the end of the day, a car ya dear IMF no. Ya Sabosiana, ya Bona, ya project SCC wa. Yentimum completing a dear Druha. Enti me pacho Your Excellency, abandoned projects. Wo big push, you know. Also by starting for and now the war on obey. And our first so ports. Yet you have taxi beer, sebe, nyansenim. And a Toyota Viz, unkita 70 to 80,000 ultimate. I don't know why we are here. Intimate patro, dear now obey because ye bre.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Alaska, Ahoto FM. Alaska. I'm coming to you. I'm staying here for a while. From here I'll be coming. I see Samuel Wonto, Kwame Menka, Erica Hianyo, Bernard Avile. I know he has a question. He has a laptop in front of him.
Right. Thank you very much. My name is Alaska the Don with Ahuto FM. Mr. President, my question has to do with our universities. Most of the times, we normally talk about free SHS without talking about the tertiary institutions, especially the universities. But there are a lot of challenges and problems there. My question is, what are you doing when you are voted for as a president of this country with regards to problems going on at the tertiary institutions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've taken a lot. Okay, Benjamin Akakpo. I see you at the back. Benjamin Akakpo of Joy News.
Thank you very much. I have one question in two parts. Your Excellency, you spoke about the Tema Oil Refinery in May. You made mention of the fact that you would revamp the Tema Oil Refinery and that some of its problems are actually because it's a state-owned enterprise. I want to know what exactly is the plan. I feel the Tema Oil Refinery is a blot on our national conscience. What exactly is the plan? And feeding into that, you spoke about reliable internet. The last I recall, we had GhanaSat 1 launched in 2017, decommissioned in 2019. But if you paid attention to the recent internet shutdown and the concomitant effects, you would realize that we are susceptible to some of these challenges. Is your administration going to consider low Earth orbit satellite technology to ensure that we can have internet stability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, before I move here, those of you here who still have questions, can I see you by hand? Okay, do me a favor. Is it okay to stand this way? Yes. Can you stand in the aisle for me so that I know that you are the ones left? Once we do we know we are done with here. No, if you can come and stand this way. Yes, in the aisle. Just for a few minutes. Yes. Okay. Okay, you go back to your seats. I think the number is huge. I underestimated it. The number is huge. So you sit for a while. I'll come back. Let's go to Parker Wilson from Ashanti Regional.
Thank you very much, Sammy.
Yes.
In fact, thank you for recognizing the importance of regional balance. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, you spoke a lot about how you're going to deal with corruption when, of course, in your next government. But then your critics say you are only flexing muscles with the wind because as an individual, you've been accused of your flirtation with the Airbus scandal.
Okay.
I want to know how you would respond to your critics when they say that your corruption activities led to the Airbus scandal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take one last one, and that will bring the total to 7. Okay, another person from Ashanti Region, Ufuri, from Mercury FM. Ashanti Region.
Thank you very much, Sammy. Your Excellency, my name is Oforiata. I work with... Please, I'm the innocent one. I'm not the notorious one. Don't be scared at all. I'm not the notorious one. Please, I can assure you that everybody is in safe hands. I'm not the notorious one.
All right, we are all yes.
Okay. I work with a Class Media Group, specifically Kumasi FM and Adeshe FM in Kumasi. Your Excellency, in some times past, a member of this government died, and in his will, it became known that he had devised a plot of land in Achimota Forest for a relative, as if that was not enough. Now, there is a problem between the organized labor and government in respect of state hotels which are on the verge of being given to a cabinet minister. This week, a minister of state did tell Parliament that an amount of 399 Ghanaian cedis had been spent on the pit called the National Cathedral, at a time that what is seen and felt on the faces of the Ghanaian youth are homelessness, hopelessness, and joblessness. My question is that, when you are elected into office, what will you do to, 1, stop the reckless and irrelevant state capture by government officials, and also 2, to restore confidence in the faces of the Ghanaian youth? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been too much politics, so I'll take Sadiq Adams. I know his question will be on sports. And His Excellency says he will be crisp with the answers for this round, so that's why I'm taking more. Yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good evening, Mr. His Excellency, the former President. My question is, Sami said, on sports. As a nation that prides itself as a sports nation, we currently do not have any world-class or international Category A stadium in the whole of Ghana, despite millions of dollars sunk as creating infrastructure for the sports. What is Mr. President's vision in getting the best of infrastructure to unearth talent, and to tie that in with the 24-hour economy? We travel around and see that sports is a very massive part of nightlife in countries even in Africa, but Ghana's sports is designed that after 6 p.m. we all go back to sleep because of the lack of facilities and other amenities to enhance the creation of jobs in the night for sports. What is, or how is the 24-hour economy designed? I've heard from our great trade business. How will that capture and affect sports so that we have around the clock sports development and enhancements in the country? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll just add a few things to what I said about free SHS. One of the objectives we would set ourselves in terms of looking at the implementation again will be to allocate dedicated funding for free SHS. If we agree that education is the most important driver of prosperity and growth, then we must be prepared to identify and earmark funds for it. We already have GET Fund, which goes into infrastructure, but we must find dedicated funding to be able to implement the free SHS seamlessly. Also, in addition to the question I answered in terms of 4 years, I have heard somebody say that 4 years, if somebody has 8 years, he will be more responsible and accountable, and if somebody has 4 years, he will not be accountable. I mean, it's the most illogical statement I ever heard. Meanwhile, the same person said 4 more for Nana. And so, if you follow that logic, it means that no president deserves a second term. That's what the person is saying. So even your 8 years you are talking about, it means when you win and you want re-election, you are not going to be accountable. And so let's, put that illogical thinking aside and look forward. The first was about the prosecution of the laptop coup in regards to our colleague Bakavoma. And I do think that I don't want to be in contempt of law, but I can say on authority that I don't think that prosecution was necessary. And so let me just keep it like that, so that I don't get cited for contempt. I think that prosecution was unnecessary, and it was an overreaction by the government. With regards to what is happening in Kenya, I don't think that we have to wait for the backlash of what the youth did in Kenya for us to do the things that we have to do. And that's why I started talking. I said, look, the time has come for us to act, and that it can't be business as usual. The Kenyan youth have sent a signal to the whole of Africa that they will push back if the leaders don't do the right thing. And so definitely I'm signaling that it will not be business as usual in our new administration. We'll cut out waste, we'll cut out opulence, we'll bring a code of conduct for public sector, public appointees, especially political appointees, in how they behave, in terms of their modesty, in terms of their humility. Your appointment to that office is an opportunity to serve. It's not an opportunity to lord it over the people. And so our political appointees and public office holders must change their attitudes. And so that is what we're going to insist on, that people that we appoint are modest people, they are humble, they will open up to the people, and they'll do the things that will make the lives of our young people better. And so we're going to hold them to a higher criteria of service than people have been held to in the past. And that's why I say if you agree to serve, you must serve and not have other side businesses and do other things. You must not go and buy state property. Anybody serving in my government will not be allowed to buy a state asset. Nobody serving in my government will buy a state asset. Vehicles or cars or buildings or land or anything, nobody serving in our government will be allowed to buy a state asset. With regards to the deaths, I have the same opinion as you. 8 of our citizens died for no reason, and our president has not even extended any recognition of what had happened. And no attempt has been made to investigate. I have said in several places that we'll investigate what happened and find out those culpable for those deaths. And aside from that, we'll compensate the families adequately on the loss of their loved ones. And it's not only the deaths during the election. You mentioned there are shaman brutalities. It shouldn't have happened. I mean, a soldier was killed, very unfortunate, by a group of armed robbers. And because of that, a whole community was subject to brutalization. I don't think things like that, should happen in the 21st century. And so I put out a statement when it happened, condoling with the victims, and also asking the military to exercise patience. I believe that the military work in a very difficult environment. They are responsible for our safety and security. But at the same time, they should recognize that the money the taxpayers pay that put them in that uniform and give them those instruments are to protect the citizens and are not supposed to be used to brutalize the citizens. And so we need to see how we deal with that. Ayawaso West Wuogon, a whole commission of inquiry was set up. Government has with impunity refused to implement the recommendations of the committee. Only recently I visited one of them. He was a footballer. He is unable to go back to work or do anything because of the infirmity in his leg. And so I went and presented a freezer, a flat screen TV, and 5,000 cedis to him in order to help him keep going. And I believe that people like that should be adequately compensated so that they can live their lives again. I am a Christian and I belong to the Assemblies of God Church. Ordinarily, building a house of God is something that we all do. I contributed monies in my local Assemblies of God branch to build our church. And it's created an environment for us to praise and worship our God. But I don't condone stealing in the name of God. And that is what has happened in the case of this National Cathedral. It is instructive that members of the Board of Trustees, some of the members of the Board of Trustees have resigned, and they have called for a forensic audit of the National Cathedral. I'm not saying it. Members on the board believe that fraud has been perpetrated against the people of Ghana, and they are calling for a forensic audit. At the time this National Cathedral came up, it was somebody's personal commitment to God. And we are sure that public funds were not going to be used for the National Cathedral. Unfortunately, we hear that 300 and something million has gone into it. Where did those payments go? Were they justified? Who did they go to? These are all things that we have to unravel. And I think that that is the first thing we do before we even decide what to do with that huge pit. And so first, let's investigate and do a forensic audit. And if people have, illegally and unlawfully taking the monies of the people of Ghana, they must be made to refund those monies. And so that's the first thing I'll do with regards to the cathedral. Yatiti me da say, say question I will say no idea me yi ano e wo bebi bebre me so me ka say Adia ye se aban eba na ehyasie ene mpuntunjuma ewo bibi bebre ebia market na school na hospital. Ube se aban foforo ba na eche se omu dream se omu discussion mu a credit no ebekọ aban dada ne nchen. Nti no mo twegu na omu ankasa omu akọhye omu de ase. Na meka se nyame ya adom ne eba sika yewo ye de behwe saa mpuntunjuma ne bebre aka a eche se ye twegu na ye de sika hyem ne etimi ewie saa ndwuma no asane ya hye ase ene foforo. Nti meka se district bia ye be inventory of all projects eche se aban aban ekọ ni na omegya egu ho na every year budget ye be bia ye be yi sika egu nchen eche se ye de be wie saa ndwuma no. Nti 4 years mewa ban mu a meye president no afi bia ye de sika beto ho se ne be ya every district ndwuma ewo ho eche se ye ja atun room no ye de sika no ebeto aso na ye wie asane ahya ase ne foforo because woko be na ye anya aba 17 points omowie enti na now person dey back to electricity, so that was one of the reasons. And so yes use mo equity aya and by now electricity bill bia anka VAT eda so yenkwa ni oman a ewo wiase ha nyina a eche se yare aba ekọ a yeje yeto efa sa yare no ho covid levy covid aba ekọ China bibia covid efrimpo yemje omo covid levy and so Ghana kwa na eje covid levy. Enti saa nyoma no wohwe emissions tax any saa taxes ni na eyeto a aban ede to ye so as a result of IMF agreement a omoaye. Enti na obi ka say oh me ba metwa eto no mu wo aban no mu sesi a so obetimi etwa to no mu a hyase netwa namato eto no mba from ne ehu menka say o montoma miansa me ba saa eto yi me ye fi ho. Enti nyawoka no ne nokre no one of the things I be ni say you be streamline VAT because mentias here say obekọ ejom na enkrofo miensa eton ade baako eye VAT 3% baako ne VAT ewo soro kakra baako so VAT ye 21%. Meanwhile omunyina the same customers. Enti say me ba ho na obeje me VAT 21% a meko ne obeje me 3% no. Enti I see a streamlining so that traders nyina will pay the same rate in terms of value added tax. Afen so ko port wa send your kind no Toyota Vitz. Eda no me ni gutafo hia me fa an example of car bia obi import and na me kind levies and taxes also. About 23 levies and taxes. Se woka se duty any sa nyoma na eno ye wo harmonized ECOWAS tariffs into duty no ntimi nya ho hwe. But the problem the levies and port charges ebi are illegal. Enti na me say ba we rationalize all those levies. Ye ni say wo ho no ye be ye firi ho. Se na be ya e be matro na ba from kakra. But the major thing I was saying is we have to stabilize the currency because it don't affect BBR. One of the reasons Ankrofo Esu and they said this week ubeko na currency no yes Bank of Ghana say currency no exchange rate near say into that one on near Bejo port. The next week ubeko na CD a free ebia 14 about 15 into that one na obetua in CDs no na say cost. One of the priorities of government will be to stabilize the currency and stabilize the economy. Senebeya obia asombejono. Enti emse emoya memano no. Universities, what are we going to do about tertiary education? Institutions. There are many challenges there. One of them is that students don't have enough hostels to live, and so they have to go for private hostels, and the private hostels are expensive. And so one of our objectives in our manifesto will be to accelerate the building of hostels, and we're going to do that with private sector. The universities have lands, and so we can engage the private sector to build hostels, and we and them will agree on the fees that should be charged in the hostels. The government alone cannot build all the hostels to accommodate the students. But there are Ghanaians who have investable funds that they can use to provide hostels. If you go to the universities today, what they'll take you through in terms of eligibility to build a hostel, they want to see your bank balance, they want to see this, they want to see, so many things. It makes it difficult for the private sector to come in. But if we apportion some land in every university,